welcome to a new episode of Startup Mavericks, the good, the bad, and the lessons. In this podcast, we interview early stage founders and startup coaches about different topics. And today I'm happy to welcome Gesine and Lisa from FLYBABY. Could you please tell us what you're doing?
Yes. Hi. Yeah, we are FLYBABY, and we have created the lightest full buckle carrier on the market. It's produced by an innovative production method, the 3D knitting, which allows it to be not only very ergonomic, but also very eco-friendly, as the production method allows the carrier to be knitted in one piece, and there's almost no textile waste.
Mm-hmm. And this is for babies, I suppose, right? From which age?
From birth on to 15 kilos.
But we can argue that you never know when 50 kilograms are hit.
Yeah, most parents carry until the kids are about 1 year old or a little longer, sometimes also depending a bit on the needs of the baby.
Mm-hmm. So that makes your product overall, right? What you said, Lisa, quite special, like reducing the waste and the 3D knitting technique. And you're also quite special as a team. You're both sisters. So do you think this is an advantage or a disadvantage?
Oh, that's an advantage.
Only?
No, I mean, partnerships are always tricky, but we know each other very well and know how to fight and when to make up. And for now, I would say it's only an advantage.
And is there a possibility to separate work and life then somehow?
No, that's maybe the hardest part.
Why?
Because you have to be very strict with yourself not to talk about work all the time when you spend private time together, and the other way around as well, not to bring your private life to work all the time. Yeah, we're business partners, sisters, and friends, so it's
the best and the worst combination. But overall, you would say it is possible, and you would also recommend it if you have a good vibe amongst or in the family. Do it.
Yes, I mean there's in every branch, I would say there's family businesses, right? Mm-hmm. So,
and then they're amongst the biggest companies in the world. So somehow it
seems to work.
And you're both moms, right? So was this the reason you came up with the idea? Because you were not really happy with the existing baby carriers?
It was partly the reason, yeah. Mm-hmm. Another part was definitely also our interest in new technologies, our background being product designers and always being, well, in a way, a little bit nerdy in looking into new technologies. And so the combination of both basically created that invention.
So are you also both fans of Nike and the Flyknit trainers?
Of course.
Really? So this is how you came up with it?
This is how the technology became famous. We knew about it before, and that's how we started looking into it, and that came together with a private need or happening, having kids and looking into this whole new world of products, right? When you start a new thing, may it be a hobby or having kids.
Which is a hobby, more.
You always discover new areas, new product ranges and stuff. So this is a bit how this came together.
What's the problem with existing baby carriers?
Well, there is, I mean, we're not the only ones on the market. There is obviously also. What we thought was a problem is that you have either carriers that are very good for infants, for very small babies, but they're complicated to handle because it's very important that the ergonomics are right, that the baby can round the bag and develop a healthy hip and everything.
posture overall.
But the best thing to use is these wraps that you have to learn how to handle and wrap. And then for later, there is much easier solutions, but they're somehow all of them are quite bulky, we thought. So especially when you're traveling or on the road, then you don't want to have this enormous thing in your bags with you that takes up a lot of space. So this is a bit how we came up with the idea of doing something in between these two, having something that is really easy to handle and at the same time has a small packaging volume and is light itself, because it's another thing you're carrying, right? It's not on.
True. Yeah.
And also it's a carrier that you can use from birth on, and most of the carriers that have buckles and are easy to use are not from birth on. So the child has to be a little bit more grown to be able to use them.
Okay, understood. So and on top of that, it's also reducing waste because all the others are not so eco-friendly as yours, right? Or most of them.
And the textile industry itself isn't eco-friendly.
Unfortunately.
Lots of waste. I mean, the way we use textiles is producing waste, but also how they are produced is not very eco-friendly because there's lots of water used, there's lots of energy used, and then if you have to cut pieces, there's always leftovers, right? So these leftovers aren't really used or burned, which is really bad for CO2. And yeah, so what the 3D knitting basically covers is that during the production process, there is no waste, no leftovers, because it's one piece. And it uses less energy also because there's only this one process going on, and then a little bit of handwork attaching the buckles to it. But then also if you want to recycle it, there is no glues used, there is no stitching, it's only one piece, so it's only one material that is easy to give back into the cycle and recycle the material.
And how did you start? Was it directly with somehow a prototype or with the design?
No, it was with a prototype. We cut different pieces of textiles that had the advantages we wanted into pieces and sew it together. And then we contacted the producer, and in a back and forth with them, we tried to visualize and do prototypes on how we wanted it to be, and then they came back to us with ideas, and yeah.
That's how it started. So, but how did you find your supplier? Google? So to other startups listening that are also looking for a supplier?
Basically, since product design is our background, we knew a little bit where to look for those kind of suppliers. And we had one person who basically had an innovative lab in the Netherlands in the beginning, with whom we worked on the very first prototype. And then we switched to another supplier who was more experienced and had better machines and better technicians.
But this is something you find out through all the emails and material samples, or how long is this process?
To find somebody, you mean?
To find out whether it's a perfect match.
Yeah, I think it depends on the industry. It wasn't this hard because there's not so many in Europe who are able to do that, and so it was easy to find out who produces the existing products on the market that are produced by this technology, and they're mainly into furniture. I mean, all of the products that are on the market right now, not all of them, but lots of them are from the furniture industry. So that's how we found them. And then for other industries, it's hard to say. Well, Nike definitely they have their own supplier, and it's based in Asia. So with a supplier like that, we wouldn't be able to get it.
Why? Because they're like only doing big...
They're only working for Nike.
Okay.
Innovative lab in Asia, and they have their own technicians, and you would never be able to even set foot into their labs.
Mm-hmm. So, and your producer, where is it?
In Austria.
In Austria. So also family business?
Family business, yeah. And it's really old. I mean, they started with knitting technology for clothing industry and then developed into this really innovative brand, I would say. They're specialized.
We have a special section in this podcast, which is called Either Or. I'm asking you sort of a question or two terms, and you have to choose one, okay, pretty fast. And I'm asking, one of you, so, I hope you're ready for it. Okay, good. Then let's start with number one. Office or home office, Lisa?
Office.
Gesine, startup or corporate?
Startup.
Lisa, 10 or 100 employees?
In between.
Gesine, Adobe or Canva?
Adobe.
And Lisa, stroller or baby carrier?
Baby carrier.
Obviously. Was there something where you disagreed with your sister, co-founder? No? No? Why home office, you said? No, office, you said, right? Yeah, office. Why not home office?
Well, once in a while, home office is also nice, but it's harder to concentrate, and there's always a fridge, and there's always some laundry to be done, and there's always something, and in the office it's less distracting, and it's also nice to see some different faces once in a while.
And you also said, like, in between 10 and 100 employees, would you also say meeting them in the office would be great? Hybrid, how do you imagine your structure, your company structure?
Hybrid is best. I mean, everybody has their own needs, but not to see people at all is really hard, I think. I mean, we realize it even though we see each other also in private, but to talk about business, it's much easier to do it in person.
And you're fine with a middle-sized small company rather than a big one?
Yeah, well, it gets more difficult, I think, in many directions, the bigger it gets.
True. More and more management you need, right?
Overhead costs.
Yeah, also true. Overhead costs, yeah. And if you want to have it hybrid and meeting in office, somehow you also need to pay for that, right? The more people you are. And when it gets to tools, Gesine, you said you would prefer Adobe over Canva. Why?
I think that's in my background. I was educated with Adobe, and I never got into Canva because I just never had the time to switch and not the need to. So.
Yeah, I think you're lucky enough that you're skilled in Adobe, because surely Canva is a great design tool, but only for basics, right? Yeah. So you will never get that deep into the topic of designing something with Canva compared to Adobe. Yeah. So I think I'm personally generation Canva. When I started to think about designs, what kind of it was like 5 years ago. How long have you been using Adobe? 10 years? At least, huh?
15 somewhere in between.
15,
I would say you're lucky enough, to be honest. Yeah. So because
we actually used freehand.
Oh wow, free
for Adobe. There was different stuff.
Quark Express.
Quark Express. Maybe if your listeners know Quark Express, that was just freehand, and then it was there, and then you needed to start from scratch if you did a mistake.
I honestly don't know. I honestly can't really remember, but there was different things before Adobe that we kind of started to use, and then Adobe popped up, and then I think it was pretty fast that everything else wasn't
relevant anymore. I'm also curious in the topic of garments, especially working with garments. I guess what I have experienced so far is it becomes complicated in terms of the production and also ordering stuff, right? It's not like you can just go there and make your product. So what is important in terms of, I don't know, ordering things? How much do you need to order? Maybe you can give us insights into producing this baby carrier.
Yeah. That's very interesting because actually that's also a big advantage of doing it in Austria. We've seen that in the past 2 years, and especially with Corona, everything got really complicated, and materials couldn't be sourced or wouldn't arrive, and we think that's a big advantage also environmentally, but also for sourcing and planning, just to do it not so far away. You don't have any control anymore. And then the production process actually doesn't, I mean, of course, there's always turning on the machine, to say it simple, that costs a little bit, but once you've done that, it's not like in the usual textile processes. It really gets a lot cheaper the more you produce. And that's not really eco-friendly either, right? So if you don't know if you can sell the stuff, then why produce tons of things that are burned afterwards because nobody bought it? So what we're able to do is produce on demand, at least a little bit. I mean, doesn't mean we produce one by one. That would mean we would have to have our own machines at a certain point, which could be interesting in a few years maybe, but for now it's not worth doing that. But at least we can order small quantities compared to the usual numbers.
So what is the number? How many baby carriers do you need to produce? At least?
The number of baby carriers isn't the tricky part that we need to produce. The amount of yarn we need to buy is the tricky part for now. And that's...
that means how much the tricky part in tons of yarn or kilogram that you need to buy?
Well, with the material we are now using, I think it's 25 kilos, right? But am I getting it wrong?
No, I think, per color.
Per color. How many colors will you have?
Now we have 4.
4. So it's 100 kilogram of yarn. And how many strollers do you get out of 25 kilogram? Carriers, sorry.
Sure. Really?
Yeah. It's just interesting, right? So 25 kilograms, are we talking about then 100 or 200?
250.
I really would have to go into my Excel, but one carrier is less than 400 grams.
Okay, so twice as much, at least. So out of 1 kilogram, you get around 2.
Yeah, but then it's 250 and not 25.
Yeah, so 250 kilo.
But per color, not per color.
In total, 250 that you need to order for 4 colors.
Yeah, and then we can, color it into.
Oh, wow, so that's really a lot. A full container of yarn in different colors.
But I mean, then it's only the yarn, right? It's big. There's nothing done out of it. So it's just the amount that the producer wants to sell at once. So then we have the yarn, and then once we start producing, there's a product to be sold. But that we don't have to order
immediately.
Mm-hmm. And where do you get the yarn from?
Well, basically, our producer orders it from another company.
Okay, so that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, but this sounds to me also way more expensive than compared to Asia. Did you ever have a look into this comparison?
Nowadays, of course, once you're really, once you're Nike and you're producing in Asia, it might still be cheaper. But if you count everything that it means, I mean, flying over to Asia and having somebody there who can do the translation and be in contact with the factory, that would cost the same in the end. Yeah. And it's way safer to have somebody here. We don't have to think about something like Corona, where you can't get your deliveries and.
Well, it's because it's on the ship. Yeah, stuck somewhere.
Nothing gets lost in translation.
Ah, true. Yes. So it's interesting. I think for people comparing that, it's a good hint to always include travel. Yeah, maybe translation issues, stuff like Corona, then problems in the logistics, etc. If you do it in Europe, of course, it's way easier to sum it up. What has worked particularly well for you on the one hand, or where you were surprised, oh wow, that's easy, or that's a huge success we did in such short time, while on the other hand, where did you see problems, or where did you face OMGs? Oh my God, so how can we solve this?
Do you mean with the production?
In general. In general. The whole procedure of setting up your company.
It's the second GmbH we're founding, so we thought we knew how everything worked, but then you start all over again in a different setup and you realize it's never the same. And there's different things to think about, a different kind of contracts to design and stuff. So this took a bit longer than we would have wished for.
Yeah, we definitely didn't think that it would take more than 2 months to open up a bank account.
Oh, yes. I've heard that these days it's also a huge problem, right? And also I've heard that traditional banks solve these problems these days way faster, correct?
Yes. We had to learn the hard way. We wouldn't listen to No, yeah, we thought it would be valuable to be connected to all kinds of legacy office and things like this. And in the end, we value a phone number of a person over the connection to Lex office.
We did go for a bank that we thought would offer us also personal contact, but they are in a transitional phase of making the whole application process also online, and that apparently takes very long.
So yeah, I think it's a good thing that we can still go to traditional banks and open up quite fast. Last question, because it's also interesting and sums up the whole process we have been talking about. How long did it take you from idea to first tangible product?
To the first tangible prototype pretty fast, but to a product that is market fit, 2 years.
Okay. So how long then, like a few months only to first prototype? Yeah. And then 2 years. But I think we have to mention here that you also have been working next to the product development, correct? Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't the only thing we were doing. It was something that evolved during a certain time, and we took the time and then decided at a certain point
to go all in on the baby carrier. So how long would people usually need to consider when they would like to produce something like that? Half a year, maybe? At least. Okay.
Also, you have to consider that at the beginning for the production and everything, it depends on your setup. Mm-hmm. If you haven't got a big company in the background already, then you're not the priority.
And the communication and the
I think so. That was also a bit
your advantage that 2 sisters were already having the right contacts.
Yeah, but also we weren't a big company for them, right? I mean, if somebody comes to the production site and says, okay, I want to develop this and I'm already in the market and I can guarantee you that I'm going to produce 100,000 pieces every year, then their priority for them to develop something.
So although you had the contacts, it took longer than expected. Okay, but that's also an interesting learning, right?
If you come with a big purse and funding, it can maybe be a little faster.
Okay. Thank you so much for being a guest with us in this podcast. Great learnings about how to build, create a tangible product, in this case, baby carrier, what needs to be taken into consideration when it comes to garments, etc. Thank you so much for sharing all your learnings.
Thanks for having us.
Ciao, ciao.